Today, I'll be showing you a critical retirement savings mistake that's silently undermining retirement plans across the country. Over my years in financial planning, I've noticed the same mistake repeatedly appearing in retirement plans, even from people who think they're doing everything right, maybe especially from those who think they're doing everything right. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to expose this hidden retirement savings mistake before it has a chance to damage your retirement security. So let's get into it. I'm excited to make this video. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss and educate people about. And in my role as a financial planner, I talk with and meet with and serve clients from Hawaii all the way to New York, and even clients that live internationally but have ties here in the United States. And before my role as running my own practice, retirement advice, as a completely independent fee-only financial planner, I worked for another firm, and in that firm, where I became a partner, I worked with retirees creating and managing income plans for the first part of my career. And the experience that I've gained from these roles is I have seen what so many people, what they are worried about. And I see great things that people do, and I see a lot of also investment and retirement and tax mistakes that people make as they are trying to make it to retirement. Everybody's trying to take in all the information that's available on the internet through their company 401k plans, through their own research, trying to internalize all that information and apply it the best they can to their circumstances, and obviously also taking into account all of the complexity and all of the competing priorities in their own life. And so it's no surprise that many people make a lot of savings mistakes. However, the saving mistakes that I see most often when I meet with people that are looking to retire, whether they're trying to retire early, like in their 50s, or kind of more of a traditional retirement, whatever the case is, the most common mistakes that I see with this group of people that I work with or that I meet with is that they are significantly over-saving because they're using a fear-based approach for retirement that's based on simple rules of thumb. Because people are so concerned and afraid of running out of money, they end up working longer than they might need to, or cutting back significantly in their life in order to set aside more money for retirement. Now, is saving for retirement bad? No, of course not. It's great. And for many people who are behind, and there's 1,000, things you can read online about how your typical American is not ready for retirement and all that. And with all that being said, nobody woke up, one day and said, oh, I just want to save more than I actually really need to, and obsess about this every single day. Nobody decided to do that. But it's the consequence of, constantly being bombarded with media and with information about how expensive retirement is going to be and how you better get prepared and how most people are not prepared, and think of all the things that could go wrong. And so you better save more and more and more. Well, most people in the real world have competing priorities that they're trying to balance. As you're getting close to retirement, it's an expensive time. You have children perhaps that are reaching adulthood. Maybe you have some grandchildren coming on the way. You're trying to, so maybe there's financial things you'd like to do there. Or maybe your health is not as good as it once was. Or you want to retire and do other things while your health is still good, right? Everybody has, or maybe you even have, as you're approaching retirement, also very common, you might have parents that are nearing kind of in their twilight years. And, there's things that you want to do, either that you need to do to care for them, or that you want to do to spend time with them. So in light of all of this, I want to go over this investment mistake or this retirement mistake of over saving. And I'm going to show some information to hopefully kind of frame up and understand why the current environment is the way that it is. And then give you some good information about kind of maybe how to reframe this problem for your own situation. So number one, retirement savings. The big rule of thumb is that once you get to retirement, your portfolio, your investments have to be large enough to where you only need to draw 4% of that portfolio per year, and that will replace all of your income. And if you do that, then you can have an inflation-adjusted income for the rest of your life. And we hear lots of stuff, inflation is a big deal. We need a plan for inflation. And so this original research, it was actually published by William Bengen in the Journal for Financial Planning in October 1994. And he was really trying to, in a very innovative way, looking at historical returns to figure out what would be a sustainable withdrawal strategy from a portfolio. And the way he defined a sustainable withdrawal strategy is that you would be able to start in year one pulling 4%, and that every year you'd be able to increase that distribution with inflation for whatever, it was for that year, and that you would also be able to last for 30 years without running out of money. And then he looked at, different investment mixes and looked at historically, what would have worked or maybe not have worked. So that's led to this idea that, okay, well, if I want $80,000 of retirement income, I need to have a $2 million portfolio. 4% of $2 million, there you go. And so, this leads people to save, 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 and save. A couple of issues with this. Number one, it does not take into consideration other revenue streams you might have in retirement. And the big glaring one is Social Security benefits that if you're watching this video, you're probably entitled to. You and if you're married, your spouse or your partner also is entitled to Social Security benefits. And those benefits are inflation adjusted for the rest of your life. A second issue that comes into play here that leads to oversaving is that there is a huge fear around the cost of healthcare in retirement. And so common things you look at, and I'll share some with you today, is that, the cost of healthcare is increasing, at a rate greater than inflation. And so you need to be, ready to spend millions of dollars once you're in retirement. Well, the cost of healthcare does go up quite a bit. However, my experience dealing with hundreds of retirees as clients over the years, and then also, teaching retirement classes in university and doing YouTube videos, interacting with thousands of people over the years around these topics. I have found that healthcare expenses, my observation, seeing the details of people's lives, real human beings, is that these expenses are far more manageable than anybody expects. It's almost across the board. People are, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this was going to be, so doable, through things like Medicare once you're over age 65, and before age 65 through smart planning with the Affordable Care Act. Now, if you haven't seen other videos on this channel, I have tons of helpful content about understanding those health insurance benefits, so please check those out. Another reason why there's significant oversaving is that the 4% rule has baked into it that safe withdrawal strategy, a very strong assumption, which is that start retirement, that income number, you need to plan for inflation adjusted for the rest of your life. Now, do some people spend that way? Yes. Do most people spend that way? No. And I'm going to show you some research that was done through JP Morgan Chase, but then also that it checks out with my own experience working with retirees. Usually there's some higher spending early in retirement. You're doing stuff, you want to remodel the kitchen. You want to, travel more. But once you get further in retirement, you spend less and less. And I want to show you some actual data on that. But that's what I've seen personally working with lots of people. You put all of that together, and what ends up happening is your typical retiree does not need as much in savings as they thought they did. Your typical retiree can often, or I should say, someone who's been saving, right, they can often retire much sooner than they thought they could. So I'm going to show you this information that I have from JP Morgan. I think it'll be really helpful to I want to provide some kind of academic rigor, some data behind what I'm laying out here. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here we are with some information from JP Morgan. I pulled this information just the other day, get some fresh, kind of up-to-date info. So we're going to look at spending over time for different categories. Okay, so the first graph we are looking at the lifetime spending, inflation adjusted, for households with between $250,000 and $750,000 in investable wealth. And if you look down here at the bottom, you will see that I chose intentionally to use a chart that started at age 45 through 49 all the way to 95 plus, because as I work with a lot of early retirees, they wonder, okay, so maybe how will my spending kind of adjust over time, for somebody who's retiring in their 50s, for example. So what this is saying is that for your typical person with about this much in savings, in wealth, their highest inflation adjusted spending is typically at about 45 years old. And over time, inflation adjusted, their spending goes down quite a bit, right? Almost, I don't know what that percentage would be, but going from about 86,000 to 51,000 by, over that period of time. So a significant drop over time. Now, nominally, so you see just the dollar amount, you'll see the dollar amount stay constant or even go up over time. But here we're talking about inflation adjusted. It's going down over time. So looking at Bill Bengen's research, that safe withdrawal 4% distribution approach, it would stay up, and even this real spending would stay, stay constant. And so if you look at this, that is a significant overestimation of what your typical retiree will spend. Let's look at a different group. So here we're looking at the lifetime spending behavior of a different cohort. So this cohort are households with $1 million to $3 million of assets. Similar, not quite the same, but similar. So here we are. Peak spending actually doesn't start, it happens about in the 50s, right? A little bit of an upward trajectory, and then it drops down over time, that same kind of general trend. So the 4%, safe withdrawal approach, it's designed with the assumption that inflation adjusted, this will continue. But you can see that the research just doesn't bear that out, okay? Let's look at a different group. So this is for households with $3 million and above of wealth. And you can see very similar pattern. So 45 through kind of maybe mid-50s is kind of the high point. But then inflation adjusted, there's a downward trend in spending. And again, I just drew on myself. Don't do that. That's no good. So I'm going to put this right down here. So again, inflation adjusted, 4% rule is overestimating inflation adjusted spending by a significant amount. And that impacts how much you actually need to have saved. Or in other words, a withdrawal rate you might be able to do that's higher, knowing that the 4% is a very, very conservative estimate. And my own experience from working with people is that is just absolutely the case. People usually spend less over time, so that's the case. Now, I want to talk about healthcare. In this chart, you can see that we have healthcare increasing over time. But you can see, yes, healthcare expenses, go up over time. Healthcare is represented by this green color here. Healthcare expenses do go up over time, but within the context of spending that is declining over time, your total spend is it's reasonable to expect that it's going to go down. One other thing I want to point out on this chart, it's applicable to this group, with wealth over 3 million, but it's applicable to every other group as well. Big assumption here that I didn't mention initially, which is housing. Housing is represented by this big gray block right here. Okay, how many of you have a mortgage? You own a home, but you have a mortgage, right? You're in your 50s or 40s or, early 60s, right? So it's probably reasonable that you're spending, a significant chunk of your income is going towards that expense. Okay, how many of you are plan to or already have paid your home off? Okay, so how many of you have planned to pay your home off or have already paid it off, or, it's kind of on track to be paid off at some point within your lifetime? Okay, so if that is the case, it does not make sense for this big gray band to stay basically constant over time. It will drop down dramatically as that home is paid off. So just another example of how a rule of thumb approach can not be representative of your actual situation. And by not taking into consideration the details of your plan, your circumstances, you could end up getting, way more worried than you need to, saving more than you need to, working longer than you need to. This is why it's so important to look at the details of your circumstances and build a custom plan that's going to do what you need to do and be right for you. Now that you've seen these hidden retirement saving mistakes, what I see most in my practice is how these errors impact even the most diligent savers. And like I said, probably the most, or especially the most diligent savers, which is why I want to offer you a complimentary call where I'll sit down with you, analyze your exact situation, and help you come up with a game plan for building your dream retirement. Click the link below to book that call, and I'll see you in the next one.